I recently finished the Big Cypress section at the Southern Terminus of the Florida Trail, and I've gotten a lot of questions, so I figured I would spend some time answering them. One of the biggest questions that I had before going in was shoes, what to do about shoes and what kinds of shoes to wear. And I got a lot of different conflicting responses, anything from bare feet to sandals to water shoes to trail runners to waterproof hiking boots. What worked for me was just my sturdy Merrells. I loved them. They were great. The only downside is that they do absorb a lot of water, so they get a bit heavier, and they take a little bit longer to dry out. But the upside is they really, really protect the feet, and that's what you need. I was hiking about a month after Hurricane Ian, so it was really, really wet. But plan for water at any time of the year. It just happened to be about 95% water when I was going. But it's really not just the water. It's that the limestone has solution holes, and they range in size from about here to massive. And they're under the water, not always, but quite often they're under the water and under the mud, and you don't see them until you hit them, and you are down to your knee or even your thigh in mud that is trying to pull your shoe off your foot. It can scrape up your feet, it can scrape up your toes, it can scrape up the top of your foot. And having something that really surrounds your foot and really, really protects your foot is important. The tread of my shoes got through great. I know that some people who have shoes with thinner treads have found that it really chewed up their shoes a bit, but these worked great for me. I did a 2-sock system. I had a layer of kind of knockoff brand Injinjis, and then I had my Darn Tough socks that went over the top of those, and it worked really well. My socks were wet all day. I didn't change them out partway through. I know some people do that, but for me, the water levels were high enough where it was just wet all day long, and so there was really no point in changing my shoes partway through the day because I was walking right back into water even if I stopped for a rest on some dry land. What I did do as soon as I got into camp is I took off my shoes, my socks, I squeezed everything out, I dried everything out as best I could so that it could dry overnight, and went into camp sandals. And then I always had a set of socks drying safety pin to the top of my backpack. I would have a dry set in my backpack in a plastic bag so they would stay dry, and then I would have the pair that I was currently wearing. So I would definitely have at least 3 pairs of socks or 3 pairs of whatever your sock system is. Hammock versus tent. I brought a hammock. I loved it. I love my hammock. I would say if you have a hammock, make sure it has a mosquito net and make sure that it has some sort of a tarp over it, because if it's not raining, it's going to be humid enough at night and there's enough dew that everything is wet in the morning, and having that tarp over it really, really helps. I didn't have the most expensive hammock. It was like $42 and it had great reviews, and I really like it. So you do not have to have a super expensive hammock. Tent would have worked equally as well, even with as wet as it was. There was enough dry ground to be able to set up a tent each night. So it really becomes a matter of personal preference. Hiking alone versus hiking with a partner. I would definitely recommend, if you can, to hike with a partner, at least one. And that's mainly because there are so many opportunities for injury in the Big Cypress area. It's not just the water, it's those limestone solution holes. It's so easy at any given point to twist an ankle, to break an ankle, to mess up a knee. And there's so much water, and there's so many areas where you just don't get to rest for a really, really, really long time. Having a partner there is peace of mind. Having a partner there gives you that opportunity if you need help. It gives you somebody to remind you to drink water and to kind of help you through the emotional lows of a journey like that, because it's really hard. If you're hiking on your own, I would definitely recommend bringing a personal locator beacon, a Garmin Mini or a Zoleo or something like that. Once again, there are so many opportunities for injury that it becomes important to know that if you need help, you can access that help. I had a bit of cell phone signal most of the time, but it wasn't super reliable, and I definitely wouldn't count on it to be able to get help if you need help. I get lots of questions about the wildlife, about the alligators, the bears, the water moccasins, things like that. Alligators, I didn't see one until I crossed 75 and I was fully out of Big Cypress. That doesn't mean that they weren't there. I'm sure they were, but they didn't want to be anywhere near me, and they don't tend to like the shallower water. So it didn't become a huge concern. I saw 3 water moccasins early on, and 2 of them slithered off as soon as they saw me, and one kind of froze for a little while and then finally ended up leaving. But once again, it wasn't a huge concern. I'm sure that they were there, but they really had no interest in me. I saw some bear scat early on as well, and a couple of times when there was dry ground, but not as much. It's so flooded. I can't imagine that the bears really want to be walking through the water all day long. So they were probably there, but I didn't see them. The biggest wildlife that I had to worry about was the mosquitoes and the ticks. The mosquitoes are relentless. It means that by dusk, by the time that they're really hitting, you are wanting to get into your tent or your hammock and get zipped up and get away from them. And you generally end up having to stay in your tent or hammock until the big bulk of them has hit around just before dawn. But they are there all night long. You only leave if you have to in the middle of the night. So I did paramethrin spray everything beforehand to help with ticks and mosquitoes and things like that. It did okay. And I brought a more natural bug repellent that most of them just kind of laughed at. I did use some Deep Woods Off at one point, and it helped a little bit more. But just know that there are going to be a lot of mosquitoes, and there are probably going to be ticks too. I would definitely wear a hat to help to keep them from getting into your hair. I didn't have a huge issue with ticks, but I know other people have had problems with it. Water filters. I used my Be Free and I loved it, and it worked great for me. It was really convenient to just be able to scoop water and immediately drink it or put it into my other containers. I hiked for a couple of days with a person who used a Sawyer filter, and it worked equally well. The Cypress water actually tasted great. I was disappointed when I got to 75 and dumped out all of my brown water and refilled it from the fountains and discovered it didn't taste as good. So I wouldn't worry as much about the taste. It is a little bit brown, but it's perfectly fine. I would definitely filter it, but the standard filters that people tend to use worked really well. Other equipment that I've been asked about, gaiters. I would definitely bring gaiters that cover your ankles. It helps keep the mud and silt out of your shoes. I didn't have the most expensive brand. They had great reviews and they worked really well for me. As long as they're functional, they should be fine. Make sure you have a shovel for digging your cat holes, because the ground it's wet, so it can get very hard to dig in, and there's lots of roots, and having some sort of a shovel really helps. I brought aqua tabs. I did not need them. My filters worked really well, but they're probably always a good thing to have. Bring more band-aids and blister band-aids than you think you'll need. I actually didn't need the blister band-aids for this section of the trail, but after hiking for 3 days with wet feet and then getting onto dry ground, that's where you tend to need them. So especially if you're through hiking, bring band-aids, bring blister band-aids. There's a good chance that you are probably going to need them after the swamp. I brought a hat. A hat's really important. I made sure it's orange. It just helps. Hunting season's pretty broad in Florida, and it helps to have something orange to wear. I would definitely bring a sun shirt as well. The Florida sun is intense, even in November, December, January. There's not a lot of shade. Even though you're walking through cypress trees, they're very thin on the top, and so you're in the sun for a lot of the time. I had a regular sun shirt. I wished I had brought my hooded sun shirt, because the sun hits the back of your neck, and also when you're setting up camp or you're taking down camp and those mosquitoes are still biting, the more coverage you can get over your arms and your neck and your face the better, just to keep away the biting mosquitoes. I think that's about it. Oh, bear can. I brought a bear can. You can use bear bag. whatever works for you best. But it was really nice to have the peace of mind of just stashing my bear can in the bushes. There weren't always great places to hang. And so just for ease of use alone, yes, it added a couple of pounds, but it wasn't the end of the world. Oh, and as far as quilts, so in my hammock, I had a air mattress to help insulate. It becomes really necessary to have something. It's not just about temperature insulation, it's about the mosquitoes. Mosquitoes will bite you right through that hammock. So having the air mattress down helps to prevent that. And then I found that during the first part of the night, because it was still warm, my quilt also helped to prevent them from biting me through the hammock. And then in the cooler part of the night, when I'd flip it around and cover myself with the quilt, I still had to kind of tuck it, because if there were any parts of me that touched my hammock, I was getting bitten by mosquitoes. So that becomes the more useful thing. And this was things coated in permethrin and everything else. The mosquitoes will still bite through it. They are vicious. So I would definitely recommend making sure that you've addressed the mosquito issue before you come. Thank you so much for watching. I will continue to post videos as I continue on through the Florida Trail, and feel free to ask any questions and I'll try to respond to them.